Good evening, everybody, and welcome to, well, I say good evening, it's good evening for us. It may be good morning, good afternoon for you, because, of course, we're based in the UK. The majority of our recent viewers have been based out in Southeast Asia. So that's giving us some strange viewing times. So whenever you're watching this from wherever in the world, welcome to D&Q. Welcome back to D&Q if you are a repeat viewer. If not, don't forget to like and subscribe and get involved with all the great stuff that we have going on the channel. But in this video, straight away with the plug, well, you know, most people stop watching after about 30 seconds, so it's worth just getting in. It's worth getting it in.
Yeah, love it.
Oh, average view time. Ah, good old analytics. Anyway, today we're here to talk about an historic game which is coming up between Malaysia and Indonesia. One of the biggest rivals, not just in Southeast Asia, but in the whole of the Asian Football Confederation. This is a biggie. This one, they first met, fun fact, back in 1957. And since then, they have met 78 times. Indonesia ran out winners on the first occasion. Most recently, though, Malaysia have had a little bit more of the upper hand, winning both games in 2019. The overall ratio still favouring Indonesia, but generally speaking, I think Malaysia aside on the up, Indonesia aside, as we spoke about in the preview, with a troubled history, certainly recently. So this one will be massive. The reason why we're doing this preview for this game is basically the way that it's shaped up, Rye. This is ultimately a group decider, probably.
Yeah, it's bang on, pal. So it was sort of funny, wasn't it? So we were speaking about this tournament, we were speaking about kind of what video is going to come next. Massive shout out to you. You know, the last video that I hopped on, I think, was the preview for this tournament. The coverage on the channel since has been a one-man show. You basically spearheading our coverage with some fantastic match reviews and some great little Suzuki Cup content. But when we were speaking earlier today, it was very much like, so what should we do today? Should we do a summary of the group stage? Should we do a little bit of a preview to, you know, Indonesia versus Vietnam? Which, you know, if you're probably tuning in to think, why are they previewing the Indonesia-Malaysia game? They've got some other games to go in the group before then. It's because this is essentially the start, albeit the last game of the group. It's essentially the start of the knockout element to the tournament, isn't it?
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if you want to kind of talk through, you know, people that are tuning in, maybe not aware. I don't know if you want to talk through kind of the ramifications of the fixtures that are about to come and how it's played out and how that ultimately shapes this last fixture, mate.
Absolutely. So we're recording this on Tuesday evening in the UK, where it'll be Wednesday morning by now in most of, well, certainly in Singapore, the host nation. But the main things that came from today is Group A is effectively done. They just need to decide who is top and who is bottom, because Thailand ran out. Really, in the end, you know, it was a victory for them, and it should have been comfy. The Philippines fought very hard. I did a match review on that one earlier. It was a dubious penalty that got Thailand the deserved victory. And Thailand certainly looking like probably the strongest side, certainly in Group A. Singapore then had the challenge, should I say, of beating Timor-Leste. But they made it a lot more challenging than a lot of people thought it would be. Timor-Leste, they've got some brilliant players, and I can't wait to see what they do in the future, because the average age of their squad, just 20 years old. They only had 6 players in the whole squad younger than 24.
Mate, how rapid is that team? So that just quickly touching on that 2-0. It was 1-0 for a long period of that game, wasn't it? From the 3rd minute to the 70th or something. Yeah. A couple of the chances that Timor had on the break, one of which in the first half cut back. I can't remember who had the shot with his left peg. What a save from the Singapore keeper to keep it at 1-0. Yeah, I was so surprised that wasn't another Timor-Leste battering. But
yeah, so it's actually, I think it's Paulo Gali, who you and I would know as Domingos Freitas. And his managers picked him as one of the best dribblers in the tournament. And a lot of people laughed at that. I have to agree. He is brilliant. And this Timor side, unfortunately, they just can't defend. And that was always going to be the big problem. There was that huge result against the Philippines. But a 2-0 win today. And Timor, despite not scoring, played really well and should be able to hold their heads up high. But the results today, effectively, Group 1 is done. The other side in that group, Myanmar, they can have no bearings on it. And it's a head-to-head now between Thailand and Singapore, who comes top and bottom. That is still a huge, huge game, particularly for Singapore, because everyone thinks that Vietnam are going to win Group B, and everyone wants to avoid Vietnam. So if it's a draw, Thailand will go top. If Singapore win, obviously Singapore and Thailand. But Group B is a lot more complicated than that, because we've got a few games coming up tomorrow. Firstly, you know, a game that we should talk about because it's worth mentioning is Cambodia versus Laos. My predictions for that actually is I think that Laos could get 3 points in that one. I think they've looked good, and they've got Billy Ketko, who's, you know, a big physical presence going forward as well. And I think they've been unlucky in some of their results throughout this tournament. Cambodia, I mean, I think it'll be a close game, but I think Cambodia will potentially lose that one and then therefore finish bottom of the group, you predict. But the big game, what is for us tomorrow, is Indonesia against Vietnam, which you think about it, you think, oh, that's a huge game. Surely that's going to have massive ramifications. But actually, it probably won't. Because if Vietnam win, then the game that we're here to talk about today, Malaysia-Indonesia, is a head-to-head.
Yeah.
It's a straight-up knockout, winner goes through. But even if Indonesia win and beat Vietnam, Malaysia beat Indonesia, Malaysia will go through above Indonesia on head-to-head. And this is where it gets slightly complicated, because Vietnam can technically go out, but they would have to lose to Indonesia, and then it would come down to goal difference, providing that Malaysia beat Indonesia, and the whole table would flip. But most people, for just logic, if it's a win for Vietnam or a draw, and probably even an Indonesia win, that game will make little difference to the game that we're talking about, which, as you rightly say, is almost a quarter-final, certainly for Group B.
Yeah, the way that the fixtures have played out in this group, with the fact that Indonesia and Malaysia is the last game, the fact that Vietnam have already played Malaysia and beaten them 3-0, it sets it up for, you know, you've already caveated it, but it's extremely likely that this last game of Group B, the last game of the group stages of this tournament, will be, in essence, the start of the knockout phases, because it's probably going to be a winner takes all, Malaysia, Indonesia. So it's worked out really nicely, isn't it? Really, from a viewer's point of view.
From a viewer's point of view, it has, and it's, you know, it's worth saying we're doing this preview, of course, before Indonesia play Vietnam, and that might change a few people's opinions on how this final game is going to go. But for me, I don't think it will. I don't think you can read into it too much unless Indonesia pull off a win. I think if it's 1-0, 2-0, 3-0, even 4-0 Vietnam, I don't think that can, you know, have any bearings, because we've already seen Vietnam, you know, a 2-0 win in their first game against lesser opposition. Then they come up against Malaysia and it's a 3-0. You know, and we're getting to the point now in the tournament where it has to be said, squad rotation, player fitness, these are all elements that have to be brought into account as well. So it is going to be a head-to-head. Now, talk us through how you think this one is going to play out.
There's a few factors to think about for this game, and I was wondering when I should talk about that, but the fact that you've just mentioned fatigue and player rotation, I'm actually going to start with this point. And before we get on to maybe talk about some players, a potential deciding factor, I think, is the period of rest before this game. And from a Malaysia standpoint, their last game, you know, this game takes place, I believe, on the 19th. Indonesia, Malaysia, I think it's the 19th.
It is, yes, the Sunday.
Their last game was on the 12th against Vietnam. So they've basically had a full week, a full 7 days to rest, plan and prep for this game. They are going to know what the fixtures are. They're going to know what, you know, they're going to know the significance, shall we say, of this fixture and how it's all going to be on this game to progress from the group. Indonesia, on the other hand, they play Vietnam, which we know is going to be a really tough game. They play them on the 15th, so they've literally got like 3 days in between to rest, recover, and work on their tactical approach to the game. And we see this. We're UK based, so we are looking at a UK footballing calendar that's ridiculously congested. and whenever there's a postponement or something, United Brentford's postponed, isn't it? That straight away the conversation is, actually that potentially buys them a little bit more of a rest period, so they're going to be potentially fresher for the next fixture in what is a congested period. So I'm applying that same logic to this game, and so I already think potentially Malaysia are going in with an upper hand just on the rest, recuperation and prep period that they've got. What do you think? What do you think of that? Do you think that will play any factor?
I think that there's a few factors to consider. One from Malaysia is, listen, they've played 3 games now. They've played 2 of the sides that they should beat, and they did. They shouldn't have conceded to Cambodia. We all know that penalty was a farce. And then, they ran riot in the game against Laos. And then they've had a setback and a bit of a reality check for them. I think that Tang Cheng Ho now knows probably what his best team is. He's got a few big decisions. De Paula is a big decision, if he goes with De Paula or not. I would also say no. I bring him on as an impact sub if required, but I think that youth and pace and power has been Malaysia's best asset so far. I think Tan Cheng Ho should know his strongest side by now. Another factor, an interesting one, Indonesia. Elkan Bagat has travelled now to Singapore from Ipswich. He plays for Ipswich in League One. He should join up with the squad. Should have joined up with the squad already. However, rumour has it, paper talk has it, that he was on a flight with someone who has since tested positive for COVID-19. So he may have to isolate for 10 days. Meaning, if he has arrived, it may all be pointless. They could be out already. They could be out already.
How's your luck?
I know, how is your luck? Singapore, rightly, the Singapore, Football Confederation, FIFA, the government, everyone, quite rightly saying you can't join up with the squad if you've got COVID, because then, it will really put this tournament in a bad light. Another player, Egi Vikri, yet to join up with the squad. Now, his club has said he's probably not going to be joining until at least the 18th, meaning that you have to say he won't be part of the squad on the 19th. So they've got a few players that might have benefited them if they'd have joined earlier, that firstly aren't, and secondly, how is that messing with their preparation? Shin Tae-yong has said, he's come out with quite a strange statement, that he can't say why Baggett won't be included in the team until after the game. But there's lots of rumours flying around about team selection and how that's going to impact the squad. So I think, firstly, Indonesia have got a huge game to play a matter of days before this tie. But secondly, another thing that plays potentially into Malaysia's hands is there could be some unrest in the Indonesian camp, and an unrest and uncertainty. And I think these are all factors that are going to play into Malaysia's hands, along with the fact that, of course, Malaysia in 2019 boasted a 2-0 record over Indonesia.
A 2-0 record. I think maybe not unrest. I mean, I don't know what the makeup of the squad is, right? But I wouldn't necessarily maybe say unrest. I'd probably say the uncertainty is such a good point, because not only uncertainty from a playing squad standpoint, you think, well, if this guy's coming, is this guy playing or not? Because if he is, he's going to walk into my position. But an uncertainty from a management point of view as to, is he available? Can I play him? Yeah. If he's in, he changes my shape. He's going to change my approach to this game. Really, really good point. I didn't actually know about those potential late additions. They'll be missing out. Surely they won't be involved in this game at the end of the group stage.
I don't imagine so.
But, maybe they'll help out if they get through. But I don't think for this what we envisage is going to be a standalone game. Really, at the end of the groups, I don't think they're going to be able to more of a hindrance potentially than a help at this point. Yeah.
I think so.
But yeah. So from like I guess if you're looking at this game with looking at like the external factors, you've got to say that the kind of prep or like the pre-prep for the game favours Malaysia already. You've mentioned about like playing styles and everything, and you've monitored this tournament pretty well throughout. You kind of know shape of players and everything, but both. So correct me if I'm wrong here, kind of at any point. But what I've looked at when I've been monitoring teams' performances, shape, both of these sides play quite a similar 4-3-3, 4-1, 4-1. So they're gonna kind of match up.
Mm.
You know, we've already said we're recording this pre the Vietnam Indonesia game, so look, there could be changes. But at this point, you know, I wouldn't necessarily expect any major changes to the shape of either side. Malaysia with their three up top, their two wingers, Safawi and is it Akyar Rashid, the left, the kind of inverted wingers that they have, they've impressed me, and I've dipped in and out, and I've seen enough of them to be like, they are seriously impressive. Safawi's top scorer of the tournament, isn't he? Along with Dangda.
Still with Dangda at the moment.
Yeah. They've been seriously impressive. They've got this question mark over the central striker. The other guy's Is it
Lookman? Yeah,
the,
Lookman. Yeah.
Lookman is the other central striker that's played in the group so far. I think they'll start him over that. Dybala who gets lambasted, doesn't he, by some portions of the fan base. And you mentioned from a Malaysia standpoint, they've had that reality check. Now, we know the Malaysia team fairly well, don't we? And we know a lot of their players fairly well. With three of the back four, Safari, Saad, Abdul Razak, the right back's Ghazali, that we don't know. I personally don't know a huge amount about him. But they're going to be looking at that 3-0 against Vietnam. And the way you put it as like that well-timed, it could well be a well-timed reality check for them. And they're going to want to put that to bed in this fixture. And as I said, the week's planning and prep is only going to help that. It's only going to help going from that 3-0 loss, the preparation for this huge game a week later. From an Indonesia standpoint, you'd probably be better placed to add a little bit more context around the team. But they've not necessarily had, from my side, they've not really had a standout figure. Like the guy in midfield, is it Irianito?
Oh yes, yeah.
And one of the wingers who's popped up, Jaya.
Yeah, Irfan Jaya.
Quite creative. And they've had some good results. I mean, Indonesia have played 2-1-2 currently, haven't they?
Yeah. And from a point of view of how Indonesia will be looking at this, they need a few players to step up. One big player that needs to step up for them is Ezra Walian. Plays for Persib in the Asian leagues, and he hasn't impressed me so far for a player that you'd expect to perform at that next level. And one of their most impressive players from my perspective has been Irfan Jaya, who's been buzzing around and has a lot of pace, a lot of guile, good skill. They've got a few other players, like you mentioned, Irianto and the captain, Evan Dimas, have combined very well so far. Irianto's couple of goals were from set pieces, which could be a big factor in this game. But I think this game, now that I've seen both sides play, like you say, it's a similar system. I think this game will be won and lost in the fullback versus winger battles. And I think that Asnawi will have a very tough job at right back, an attacking right back that likes to get forward, versus a winger in Akyar Rashid that's going to cheat. He's going to stay on the halfway line. He won't do his defensive duties. He will hang up there. And even though you know he's going to cut onto that right foot, it's whether or not you can stop it. On the other side, I don't know if Arhan will play. Picked up a knock in the first game. He's a good player as well. But if they allow Safawi and Akyar to run this game, Malaysia will win. If they go about it in the right way and maybe approach it a bit more cautiously and a bit more on the counter-attack, really, allocate Irianto to support the fullback in just man-marking Safawi. Get two men on him all the time because he rarely loses the ball. He will always try and take a touch inside and spray it. Close him down. Don't allow that. Really, and I don't like to condone this sort of behaviour, but go in hard on Akyar in the first 10 minutes. Really try and nullify that threat. No injuries, no harsh tackles, but really just make sure you put your foot in.
Just aggressive. Just
aggressive. And then they need a few players in an attacking sense. They need Witan Sulaiman, they need Kambuya, they need Dimas, Walian and Jaya to just do their jobs up front to make this a close game. But first and foremost, from an Indonesia point of view, they can put themselves in a far better position and change the entire context of this game if they get a point, or avoid heavy defeat to Vietnam. Because if after the game against Vietnam they are still above Malaysia, all they'll have to do is draw. If Vietnam go and spank them, which who knows, Vietnam are such a good side, then this will change the context. I think if Indonesia have to attack Malaysia, I think basically, to summarise, to cut a minute or two off what I was going to say there, I think whoever's top going into this game will go through. Because I think that the tactical counter-attack will benefit whoever doesn't need to win.
Yeah.
But who knows? Who knows?
Yeah, no. You made a really, really good point about Indonesia strength from wide. I mean, to be fair, both teams and the whole underarching point of the battle out wide being a key part of this game is bang on. We've already spoken about Akiara and Safari Seeds, well documented, but whilst they've not necessarily had that standout player, Indonesia, again, we're aware of the opposition. They've scored 9 goals in 2 games. In the first game, they scored a hell of a lot. Scored a fair few from corners.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was awful. I don't know if it was tactical supremacy from set pieces or whether it was just absolutely awful marking.
A mixture, I'd say.
I think it was Cambodia they had in the first game, I believe. And the other goals in both of their games, they get the ball wide a lot. They also look dangerous from wide areas, which is why Jaya stood out for me in the bits of Indonesia that I've seen as well. It's interesting that you think that the position of either team going into the game is going to be a key factor. For me, look, it will be, of course. It will be. But I still have a feeling that Malaysia will win this game. And even though you mentioned that, my thought on even if Malaysia are going to go in that with a mindset of a draw, I still think they will win the game. I just think they have got the quality across the pitch, but in particular in the final third, to cause problems and to have enough to win the football match. What about you?
I think that the better side... I think that the team with the better players is Malaysia. I think Malaysia have got better individuals, and Indonesia on the day will need to be the better team. They'll need to be the better unit. Because Malaysia are better. They've got better players. I think, Jaya, as we've said, one of the biggest threats from an Indonesia point of view is not as good as Yahya Rashid. He's simply not. But if they get it tactically right, I think this game's almost more about the tactical setup and more about the managers. I think that Indonesia have got a tougher job than Malaysia do, regardless of how the table's looking, because I think Malaysia are the better team man for man. But Indonesia will have to show character, they'll have to show desire, because, listen, the winner gets a place in the semi-final. Huge for either side. And, I think it's safe to say I predict Thailand, Singapore in Group A, and in Group B I predict Vietnam, Malaysia is how I predict it. But I love the fact that it's this kind of Mexican standoff at the end between these two sides. Great rivals from many, many years in the past. They played each other so many times, and I can't wait to watch it.
Yeah, no, neither me, pal. Neither me. You've summed that up absolutely perfectly. I'm looking forward to seeing how it transpires. I'm looking forward to... I'm actually, I have to say at this point now, I'm looking forward to this as the standout game, and then I'm looking forward to the knockouts. I went back and had a quick look at our tournament preview, actually, and the teams that we'd kind of... And the teams and players that we'd maybe kind of earmarked as potentially doing well in the tournament. And we've not been too far off, have we? We've not been too far off.
We've not.
So, we'll have to see how this prediction pans out. But
you nailed Group A, by the way. Fandy and Dangda as the players to watch.
Yeah, no. I mean, kind of Dangda was a little bit of a giddy, wasn't it, really?
Yeah.
You're talking about going into it, he was third. He was third on the all-time leading scorer list for the comp. And then I think I even might have said in the pre-tourno, he'll be looking to make that record his own. You can sort of say that, can't you, when you've got Timor-Leste and
Myanmar
and very winnable games in the group. And then the great one was Fandy that I called. I was like, watch out for this guy. He scored 2 in the first game. He missed a sitter the other against Timor-Leste today. I don't know how he missed it. But no, we've been pretty good on our.
We've been pretty good.
predictions so far. So let's see how we get on this one.
Absolutely.
Long may it continue, my friend.
Long may it continue. And if you're thinking, I wonder how accurate they were, then why don't you click right here, right now, to watch that prediction, and click just here to subscribe. Thank you very much for watching, and good luck to both sides going into this game. Who's going to win? Comment below. We'll see you next time.